Lesson 3, fraction decimal percent conversions. But wait, first we're going to do example 0. Example 0 means it's like a pregame show. So before we get to converting all over the place, let's just consider this one situation, this one nice situation. I've got a fraction, 3/5. I want to make it a percent. How could you do that? There's actually multiple ways you could do that. But I want to show you this way, the direct proportion way, because I love proportions. So 3/5 is the fraction. You could call this not the eraser. You could call this a ratio. It's a 3-to-5 ratio. It's a ratio of parts to whole, right? So whole pizza's got 5 slices. I take 3 of them. It's a ratio. 3/5. Fractions are ratios. Anyway, we got this 3/5. Now, what does a percent mean? A percent is a ratio as well, but a ratio where it's always out of 100 parts. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that these two ratios are the same. That 3 out of 5, the ratio of part to whole is 3 parts out of 5, is equivalent to saying a certain number of parts out of 100, and that certain number of parts is the percentage. So this proportion, it says a lot, doesn't it? It says a lot. So we can set it up this way. Now, we know how to solve these things. You can do the old rule of 3, the rule of 3. So you multiply the two numbers that share a diagonal, 3 times 100, and then you divide by the leftover number, which is 5, and you're going to get a 60. So what are we finding here? P equals 60. So 3/5 is 60%. There's the answer right there. 3/5 is 60%. I love the proportion setup. I really do. Because, again, the whole idea is that a percentage just means out of 100. In fact, that's worth writing down here. I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to write it in, like, maybe not purple, whatever that color is. Percent symbol. That symbol there literally stands for the phrase, how should I say, of 100 equal parts. Or even, I guess you could say just simply over 100. That's what the percent symbol literally means. So 60% literally means 60 of 100 equal parts. It's a part to whole ratio where the whole is 100. This is part to whole ratio. This is a part to whole ratio. These are the same, so they're two ratios that are equal. That's how you get a proportion. But again, what makes a percent is that we're saying the whole has 100 equal parts. That's all. That's all there is to it. Is there anything else I could add? I don't think so. So I like that proportion setup. Really, I do. I like that proportion setup. A lot of times when I'm chewing on a percentage, I might actually just do a proportion so I can be sure of myself. Parts over whole. Another way to visualize this is to think of a two-sided ruler, and I've been doing this a lot more in like the second half of my math life. But two-sided ruler, you know how some rulers have inches on one side and centimeters on the other? Well, think of this ruler as having numbers on one side and it has percents on the other. And let's just, since we have 3/5, let's just have the ruler go up to 1. So the number that we had was 3/5, right? So I'm going to have to break this into 5 equal parts, I guess. There we go. So that would be 1/5, that would be 2/5, that would be 3/5, that would be 4/5, and 1, of course, is the same as 5/5. Okay, so the number that we have is 3/5. Now, if I were to mark the ruler over here in the same way, first of all, we're going from 0 to 100%. One whole is cut into 100 equal parts. That's what percent is. So what are these tick marks then? Well, that would be 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, right? You got to count so that you get to 105 counts, right? 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So the 3/5 is the same as 60%. It says it right there. I like that ruler approach. The ruler approach is a nice visual that you'll see me fall back on sometimes just to make sure that an answer makes sense. Remember, we always want to ask ourselves, does our answer, whenever you do any math problem, does our answer match our expectation? The ruler is how I can set up an expectation. It's kind of hard to, come out. This I think is fortunate. We counted in fifths. We counted by 20s. We know that this is exact thing. 3/5 is exactly the same as 60%. It's not always going to work that way with a ruler. But, when you're just drawing a ruler. But it does help you set up your expectation. So I like the ruler for that reason. To solve it, of course, you want to be exact about it. You probably want to set up a proportion, something like that. Okay, so I like these two methods because it's nice to have something in the back of your head that anchors your understanding that you can fall back on in a pinch if you're doing it some other way and you can't quite remember, am I supposed to do this way or that way? And then you can check back to this and go, yeah, that's wrong, so it has to be this way. Yeah, not that way, this way. Yeah. Okay, so anyway. All right, now let's get to the main event. We're going to start converting. On this page, we're going to convert fractions into decimals and decimals into percents. We're going to go in this direction. So let's use a specific example to sort of help remember our moves. So as a fraction, I'm just going to take the example 3/5, which we've already worked with, right? Now, what I was just saying on the other page, on page 1, first of all, let's make that look like a 3/5, was that if you wanted to go directly from a fraction to a percent, you could do the old 3 out of 5 is what out of 100, right? Set up a proportion. That'll work. What a lot of people do in practice, simply because it's faster when you have a calculator in your hand, is to go this way. They actually take what looks like the long route, but if you have a calculator in your hand, it's actually the short route. First, convert the 3/5 into a decimal. You will get 0.6. How do you get 0.6? Well, on your calculator, you can do 3 divided by 5, right? Top divided by bottom. 3 divided by 5 on your calculator comes out to 0.6. I suppose you could divide it by hand if you really wanted to. 5, add into 6. 5 goes into 3. How many times? Well, you have to make it a 3.0. Move your decimal up. Let's see. 6 times 5 is 30. There's nothing left. So, yes, it is a 0.6, right? Usually you're going to use a calculator. So 0.6. And by the way, look at this. By the way, 0.6 means 6/10, which reduces to 3/5. Yep. Okay, cool. It's working. It's all working. Cross that off. Get this out of here. It's all working. Now, to make that into a percent, to make the 0.6 into a percent, all you got to do is, well, first let me give you the answer. It's 60%. All you guys to do is slide that decimal 2 places to the right. Because, why does that work? That works because you could say that 0.6 means 6/10, and 6/10 is the same as 60 over 100, right? Times 10, top and bottom. And over 100 is what the percent symbol is for. So 60 over 100 literally is 60%. So the bottom line, all you really got to do is slide your decimal twice to go from a decimal to a percent. Think of it this way. I'm going from a decimal to a percent. So slide the decimal to the right. Okay. Boy, that didn't take me as long as I was thinking it would. There's our methods. There's what we got. You want to turn a fraction into a decimal? Great. 3 divided by 5. You want to turn the decimal into a percent? Great. Slide the decimal twice. Look how nice that is. You can turn 3/5 into 60% in no time at all if you've got one of those electronic doodads inside of your hand. So tell you what. Now that you've got this little road map here that you can refer to, why don't you pause the video and try as many of these as you can get. There's 9 little problems here, 9 parts. Try to solve all these things, or not solve, but try to do all these conversions real quick like. Pause. Okay, now come back and prepare. Did you get 0.25? I hope so. What do? Well, you could just grab out your calculator, really, and you go 1 divided by 4, and the calculator will tell you 0.25. Here, you'll do 3 divided by 8, and the calculator will tell you 0.375. So far, so good. Here, it's 2 6/7. You can just say right away it's going to be 2 point something, right? It's 2, and then there's a fraction involved. And if you divide the 6 by the 7, oh my gosh, I haven't done it yet. Get me my calculator. 6 divided by 7. It's like, if you're, depending on how you round, it's going to be like maybe a 0.857. 2.857 or thereabouts. I got a 1 after the 7, so the 7 stays a 7. Okay. How about these? Convert to a percent. Remember what it was. If you want to go from a decimal to a percent, you slide 2 places to the right. The important thing there is it's always 2 places, never more, never less. If I go 2 places here, that's going to be a 26.5%. The decimal goes there. If I slide this one 2 places, it's going to be a 0.2%. The decimal goes there. If I slide this one 2 places, that it's right now it's like a 3 point. If I slide it 2 places to the right, it's going to be 300%. So if you have 3 times as much, it means you have 300% as much, and so on. How about these? Convert to a percent. Well, if you want to take the shortcut, you can go 4 divided by 5, and then your calculator is going to say 0.8, and then you slide your decimal twice, and you get 80%. Woohoo, that was fun. If you want to do this one real quick with a calculator, you go 3 divided by 500, and your calculator will tell you, let me be really safe. Yeah, of course, 0.006. And then you would slide the decimal exactly 2 places, and so it becomes a 0.6%, right? Make sure you go exactly 2. No more, no less. Exactly 2 spots. And then here, percent, 1 1/4. If it's over 1, that means it's going to be 100% plus something, right? The 1 is telling me 100%. So if you want, you can just kind of say, well, it's going to be 100% plus. Now you got to take the 1/4. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. Slide it exactly twice, and that's 25%. So you got 100% plus another 25%. You've got 125%. Cool. And if this was a 3, we'd have 325%. And if this was a 12, we'd have 1,225%, or however you pronounce that. So, while I'm on this, I might as well just kind of throw this in here for good measure. Remember, the direct route is you can set it up like this: 4/5 equals p over 100. And the rule of 3, 400 divided by 5, this comes out to p equals 80, or 80%, right? So that was the proportion way. Yet another way. If you have a fraction, if you have 4/5 of, that means 4/5 of a whole. That's what it means. When you say you have 4/5, we don't usually pronounce this part, but that's what it means. We got 4/5 of a whole. Well, of means times, and a whole has 100%. So actually, you could just take your calculator and go 4/5 times 100. 4 times 100 divided by 5 is, and then you would get the 80. You would get the 80%. This stays as part of your answer. You get the 80%. So that's kind of cool. So I'm just going to throw that up there because it's cool. I'm going to say, or 3/5, multiply it by 100%, and you will get your 60% in that case. Okay, well, I hope that was fun. Let's maybe get some of this. Let's get this moved out of the way, please. Maybe I'll just shrink it down so it stays on its page. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go the other way. We're going to go percents to decimals to fractions. So percent to a decimal, decimal to a fraction. How do you convert a percent to a decimal? Let's use as an example 80%. Well, remember we were moving the decimal to the right to make a decimal to a percent. So what you do is you move the decimal the other way. You move it to the left. In other words, what we did was we took the 80%, the decimal's here, and we went exactly twice the other way. And that's how you get the 0.80. How do you get the fraction? Well, the fraction for 80% is going to be 4/5. And again, the question is how you get that. Well, by place value, PV for place value, remember how decimals work. That's the 10th, that's the 100th. So 0.80 literally means 80 over 100. and then it's a matter of reducing. You can cancel take a 0 off the top and bottom, divide by 10, in other words, top and bottom, that's 8/10. Now you cancel 2's. So it's a matter of place value, then reduce. That's how you could turn any decimal into a fraction. Place value, read the place value, put the number in that place value, and then reduce. Cool. Now there is a way, I suppose, that you could do this. If you wanted to jump from a percent straight to a fraction, how would you do that? If you didn't want to go through a decimal first? Well, you would use the idea that the percent symbol here means of 100 equal parts. 80 of 100 equal parts, or over 100. That's another way to say it. 80% literally means 80 over 100. You can take the percent symbol out, put the 100 in. Notice we're basically back to where we were here. So then you reduce. So then reduce. And when you reduce, the 80 over 100 will become 4/5. So there's our nice little ways that we can convert percent towards decimal towards fraction. With that as your roadmap, I invite you again, pause the video, try them 9 suckers. By the way, just as a comment, that's just an artifact. We don't have to say that these are negative numbers. They don't matter. Okay, anyway, pause the tape, so to speak, and give those a twirl and come on back. You're back already? Okay, well, hopefully you got 0.35 here, right? Remember that to go from a decimal to a percent, you would go this way. Well, what I like about this, notice the D comes before P because it's like a double play. Get it? Double play. Double play, meaning that if you want to go from one to the other, you got to take 2 jumps. And if you're going from percent towards decimal, you got to go to the left. Isn't that the slickest thing you've ever seen? Go to the left, young man. So boom, boom, it becomes a 0.35. I love that. Go always 2 places, exactly 2 places. This is 216, the decimal's there. So if I go back 2 places, it's a 2.16. Remember, whenever you have over 100%, it means you have more than 1. So if you have more than 200%, you have more than 2, and that's why we're getting 2.16. This one, man, my college algebra students get this wrong all the time. So you're not going to get it wrong. You're going to know the secret wisdom. The secret wisdom is slide the decimal 2 places, exactly 2 places, no fewer, no more, always 2 places. If I go 2 places, boink, boink, this is becoming a 0.005. Right? Let's just say right. Right? Right. Okay, cool. That's dumb. Convert to fractions. Well, looking at our list up here, to convert a decimal to a fraction is a place value kind of dealy. Place value, and then you reduce after that. So that says reduce. So we got tenths, we got hundredths. So we just take the 45 out of the decimal and put it into the over 100 thing. If you cancel 5s, you're going to get a 9 over 20. This one, 1.68, is going to be 1, and then you're going to have 68. It's also in the 100th place. So if I cancel 2's, that'll be like a 34 over 50. And if I cancel 2's again, I'm going to end up with 1, and it's going to be a 17 over 25. Is that what you got? Oops. And then this one here. Whoa, we got some place value, all right. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 10,000ths. So what we got to do is we got to take that 25 out of the decimal thing there, put it in the 10,000ths place, and then reduce. Turns out 25 will go into 10,000 evenly. So when you reduce this thing, you can just go, divide by 25 on your calcu-type later. You'll have a 1, and this will be, I believe, a 400, right? I hope so. Yeah, 400. So far, so good. Okay, you go away. Okay. Convert to fractions. This is an example of when I like to take the direct route. What am I talking about? I want to go from a percent to a fraction. I suppose I could go to a decimal then to a fraction, but I really like to just go this way. Just put it over 100. The percent symbol means over 100, so I'm going to take advantage of that. by golly. 30%? Oh, you mean 30 over 100. That's what you mean. Now, if you reduce, you're basically just going to cancel 10s top and bottom. So that's a 3/10. Groovy city. Okay, what the heck is this one? 116 and 2/3%. Well, first of all, the 100% tells me I'm going to be 1. And then I'm going to have 16 and 2/3%, right? So 1 and then 16 and 2/3%. Now the 16 and 2/3% is the same as 16 and 2/3 over 100. So it's going to be 1 and 16 2/3 over 100. Now, how am I going to do that one? Well, you could use your calculator, I suppose. You could take 16 and 2/3, maybe call it a 16.666667 and divide by 100. But I'm going to show you a nice slicked way to do this exactly. What you would do is you would take 16 and 2/3 and you would divide it by 100. No, you wouldn't. That's if you were doing decimal stuff. I don't want to do decimal stuff. This is what I would do. I would take what's on top here, which is 16 and 2/3, and I would call it 48 I would call it a 50 over thirds. Remember how you do improper fractions? This times this is 48, add 2 is 50. So that's a 50 over 3 over 100. And then the way that you unstack a fraction that has 3 layers to it is you take the 50 over 3 from the top and you are dividing it by 100, but remember, in fraction land, to divide is to multiply by the reciprocal. So you take the 50 over 3 times 1 over 100. Here's a good thing you might remember from somewhere. When you're multiplying fractions, you can cross cancel, right? So cancel the 50 into the 100 twice. We're getting a sixth. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. We're getting 1/6. So it's 1 1/6. This is 1 1/6. That might have seemed a little long. If that seemed a little long, I suppose I could show you something that's a little bit shorter, just a little bit shorter. Take the 116 and 2/3% and put it over 100. If you have a calculator, you can be fearless. You would go 3 times 116 is 348. You'd add 2. You'd have a 350 over 3. That's what this becomes. And then again, to divide by 100 is to multiply by 1 over 100. Multiply by its reciprocal. See, this isn't taking as much ink. Cancel 50s. 50 goes into 100 twice. 50 goes into this 7 times. What I've got is I've got 7/6. Now 7/6. 6 goes into 7 once with 1 left. It's the same as 1 1/6. I guess I'd accept either answer really. But 1 1/6 I think is better. So that one was fun, right? You weren't expecting that much fun. Okay, 0.63%. Well, back to the old ways. You just divide it by 100. Now we're trying to make this into a fraction, which means I don't really want to do any... Here's what I'll do. I don't want to have a decimal inside my fraction. That's the thing that's really bothering me. So you can do this trick. Multiply the top by 100, multiply the bottom by 100. Or, another way to say the same thing, slide this twice, slide this twice. It's 63 over 10,000. And what goes into 63? A 3 probably, but 3's not going to go into 10,000, so I think that's about it. 7 goes into 63. 7's not going to go in. That's it. You can't really reduce that. That's your answer. So that's pretty cool. I snuck in 2 tricks, right? The old slide the decimal top and bottom trick. The old to unstack a fraction, you can multiply. You take the top, divide by the bottom, which is top times reciprocal of bottom. That's a good trick. Okay. Well, before we leave this lesson, as long as we're talking about converting things between fractions, decimals, and that kind of stuff, here's an application that'll come up in your blueprints course for sure. It'll also come up later in this course, or just every now and then it's going to come up in this course. Let's say you've got, boy, that's a typo. That's supposed to say 6 foot 8 inches. That's what that's supposed to say. Let's say you have 6 foot 8 inches, and you want to make it into just feet with decimal feet. How do you do that? Well, it's 6 point something. Can I get you to agree to that? It's 6 feet, and then it's another part of a foot. What part of a foot? Well, what you want to do is you want to remember there's 12 inches in a foot. So you go 8 over 12. And you make a decimal out of that. 8 divided by 12 is going to give you a 0.6666667. So I'm going to round this maybe like this. 6.667. Pretty good. So the idea, again, inches means how many feet is that? Well, 8 inches, there's 12 in a whole foot. So this is a part over whole of 8 out of 12. 8 out of 12 is 0.666 as a decimal. So it's 6.667. All right. 3 foot, 2.5 inches. Well, it's going to be 3 point something, right? Again, it's 2.5 inches out of 12 total, right? So this is like the part. To make it into a decimal, you want to do part over whole. 2.5 over 12, which if you do that, which I guess I didn't do that, I'm going to do that now. 2.5 divided by 12, this is giving me the decimal portion of about 208. 3.208 feet. You like it? Now let's go the other way. I got 8.5 feet. That's how many feet and how many inches? Well, again, 8.5 feet. You know it's 8 feet and some inches, right? Notice it's definitely not 5 inches. No. It's 0.5 feet. That means half of a foot. How many inches is half of a foot? 6 inches is half of a foot, right? So here's a question for you. How do you get that 0.5 to turn into a 6 inches? Well, I think of it this way. 0.5 is like 50%, and it's 50% of a foot, and a whole foot has 12 inches, so it's 50% of 12. In other words, just do this. Take the 0.5 and you multiply it by the 12 inches that's in a whole foot. It's like saying 50% of 12. So 0.5 times 12 is 6 inches. Here you can do this similar kind of thing. 7.833 feet. Well, you know it's 7 feet. How many inches is it? You take the decimal part. It's like saying 83%, but you multiply it by 12. So what is that? 0.833 times 12 is, I'm getting just about, well, it says 9.996. You want to call it 10 inches? You get just about 10 inches. So the two things that are happening here is if you've got the inches, put it over 12. If you've got decimal feet, multiply it by 12 and you'll get your inches. Looks like we've got 2 more to go here. 16.3 feet to feet and inches. Why don't you try these two yourself real quick? See if you can get them. Pause. Come back. Okay, 16 feet is definitely going to be 16.3 feet is definitely going to be 16 feet and then some inches. How many inches? Well, it's 0.3 times the 12 inch total. So that's going to be, that comes out to 3.6 inches. 16 feet and 3.6 inches. Okay. 817 inches to decimal feet, and then, this is like a two-parter, and then feet and inches. Well, 817 inches. You know that every 12 inches is a foot. So you divide by 12, and this is going to come out to a big thing. 817 divided by 12, I got 68.08, and it's 3. So maybe I'll put an extra 3 on there for luck. That's how many feet it is. Feet and inches. Well, you know it's 68 feet. How many inches? Now you just take the decimal part, 0.08, 3, multiply that by 12. What I like to do on my calculator, I've got a 68.08 staring at me. I just subtract the 68 equals, and then I've got the decimal part staring at me. And then I can say times 12 equals, and it's exactly 1 inch. How do you like that? 68 foot, 1 inch. Exactly. Okay, cool. So that was a practical application and a half. All right, so hopefully this is all, hopefully you knew a lot of this already, and maybe all you had to do was plug in some gaps in your mortar joints, so to speak. But good. With this under our belts, we can now tackle the percent problems like I wanted to. That's next time.